Hello and welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels and we'll have a special show for you today. I hope you're having a beautiful afternoon. Well, it's a brand new week and we're hoping for amazing things to happen to us all this week. But first, let's take a look at some of the major headlines this past week. It is the news from the front page. First, we'd like to talk about the Supreme Court's verdict on the presidential elections. The Supreme Court of Nigeria has upheld President Tinubu's election, and that is the apex court, so it is final. Now, all of the legal matters surrounding the presidential elections are over. And in the studio to discuss some of this news, I have a lawyer, Izuchukwu Oboko. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I also have another lawyer, Akbo
Ikogo. Nice
to meet you. Welcome. So I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
I'm going to start with you, Akbo.
Okay.
What does this mean for the nation? And what do you think the opposition parties should do at this point? Because this legal matter has lingered for a while. So what do you think the opposition have to do about the matter?
Okay, well, everybody knows Supreme Court's decision is final in this matter, so there can be no more court cases on this. Now we just have to come together, and the opposition has to also make sure that they continue as opposition parties to make sure, as a sort of check on the executive, to make sure the executive does the right thing, to make sure every policy they bring out, they look into it, criticize where necessary, but at the same time, we all have to just come together and try to move the nation forward.
What are your thoughts? Izuchukwu?
Well, my thoughts on the Supreme Court judgment and what the opposition needs to do. The Supreme Court is the apex court and, in a manner of speaking, the final court. Although some say there is the court of God. But how much help that will be in this instance, we don't know. But the opposition really can champion electoral reforms. Some of the things that they complained about in court should find a way of forming part of our electoral legislation, right? And they should continue to check the ruling party on their policies and criticize in a very constructive way. Somehow, positioning for the next election has already started. For those who are veteran politicians, if you are close to them, you know that leaning and political alignment has started ahead of 2027 elections. So yes, constructive criticisms, champion electoral reforms, and then ensure you put your house in order, because a lot of divisions within the parties really affected the chances of some party in the last election cycle.
Yeah, well, do you think we have a strong opposition? I used to think we did have a strong opposition in the previous governments, but it's seeming like we do not have an opposition anymore. What are your thoughts?
Well, I must preface this by saying that this is just my opinion. I believe the Labour Party and the youth in Nigeria right now are the real opposition, not the PDP. The youth and the Labour Party and some other people that are not really party affiliated, I don't know if it's all right to mention names here, have also been the ones putting the APC government in place. So yes, we have a viable opposition, but not the PDP, in my opinion.
Okay. And what role do you think the civil societies will have to play in ensuring that there's pressure on this current government to make certain electoral reforms?
Well, the civil society will always have to continue what they have been doing before. In fact, there have been cases where the civil society has taken the government to court to actually compel the government to do the right thing, to release information. I remember the Freedom of Information Act and everything was actually championed by civil society. So yes, they will need to continue all they've been doing before.
Speaking of electoral reforms, the former chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, Atahiru Jega, has emphasized that the president should not have the authority to appoint the electoral boss, proposing new measures for credible election management in Nigeria. Now, Jega, who is renowned for overseeing one of Nigeria's elections, has called for the amendments in the Electoral Act of 2022 to mandate electronic posting of all election tallies. While acknowledging that the current electoral law is an improvement, he believes it can still be enhanced to eliminate ambiguities and strengthen provisions. What are your thoughts on this, on his view?
I couldn't agree more with Atahiru Jega, and Atahiru Jega has my respect, as conducting one of the most credible presidential elections in Nigeria. He's just re-echoing the thoughts of millions of other Nigerians. I mean, it was clear from the rhetorics from INEC in the last election cycle. If you followed Festus Okoye, some of the media interviews he granted, and even that of the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood, you would see that it was intended that the use of beavers was going to be compulsory. In fact, quoting Festus Okoye, he had said that INEC had no discretion in the matter, that as a matter of compulsion and law, INEC had to use the beavers. But it is no longer news how everything played out and how beavers was suspended. So yes, there should be electoral reforms, and those reforms, in my own opinion, should take the form of beavers being clearly spelled out to be mandatory for the use of elections. Secondly, the president should have no business appointing the chairman of INEC. Again, in the interest of fair play. So there is a president who may likely contest in 2027, but he has input in the composition of the management cadre of INEC. That, in a sense, does not show. Yes, we know at some point recourse may have to be made to the National Assembly when it comes to removal. But we know how these things go. So yes, you should have no input in it. Another one is to find a way to reduce the participation of the judiciary in our elections. They should really play limited role in deciding who won an election, because all the justices can account for themselves just for one vote for each justice, really. So if the elections are conducted in a way that they are largely seen as credible, fair, and transparent, right, I believe that a lot of litigations, electoral litigations, will not happen. Again, because of the strain that it does on other very sensitive commercial matters in our courts. Electoral matters are time-bound. What it means is that the justices who sit on the several election panels across the country will have to abandon the cases they are already dealing with. From a judiciary that is already understaffed, increased and humongous workload, we're now pulling them away for upwards of 180 to 240 days, and sensitive commercial matters are suffering. It's impacting on the economy, and it's a lot of strain on the human resource in the judiciary.
So if the judiciary is not the last place where election matters are being decided, which body should be responsible for deciding who won an election?
Awesome. So my point is not that the court should not participate at all. I mean, there will be pre-election disputes and there will be post-election disputes. I'm saying that the involvement of the court should be greatly reduced. If you know the volume of election litigations that goes to the court immediately after every election cycle, all the way from presidential election down to even councillorship elections, no legal system can survive. And why do we have this? By nature, Nigerians are a very litigious people. Every little thing you hear from my lawyer will go to court. You know, there are certain matters that should ordinarily be settled. Now, I'm not talking about that for election dispute. But I'm saying that there are ways that INEC can carry out elections. Participants won't feel so cheated that they want to litigate every single item. So what I'm saying, in essence, is reduced participation of the judiciary.
All right. Boss, Izuchukwu made a very valid point. It's like the president shouldn't have the power to actually, just reiterating what Professor Jega had said, that the president shouldn't have the power to appoint the next electoral boss. But how feasible is that? How feasible can the laws change?
Well, first of all, if I may just refer to a point that he made, which I agree with, I think the Electoral Act needs to be further amended to actually make it compulsory, the electronic transmission of results. If we had done that, we would not have had as many challenges to the presidential results as we have right now. And going back to the issue of the president appointing the chair of the Electoral Commission, I really don't see, in my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with that. As long as you have men of integrity there that are willing to do the work and are just uncompromisable, in a manner of speaking, there's nothing wrong with having the president appoint. Because after the president appoints the ministers, he appoints the heads of parastatals and all that. So I don't think there's a problem with the president appointing the chair of the Electoral Commission. All
right, Mr. Juku. Well, now that it is Tinubu's presidency has been validated, obviously all forms of litigations are over. However, there are certain prominent Nigerians that are still echoing the fact that another candidate won the elections, even though the Supreme Court has just settled the matter. And one of those prominent Nigerians is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the author. In a recent, I think, in a recent symposium that she was having, or she was invited to, she recognized Peter Obi, the presidential candidate for the Labour Party, and she did introduce him as the man that a lot of people publicly knew won the election. Now, for somebody like Chimamanda Adichie, you know, with such a huge following and with such huge international attention, is that patriotic for her to say? You know, what are your thoughts on that particular matter? I'm going to start with you, Abbas.
Okay, I'm going to start. I actually watched the event where she said that. She introduced Peter Obi as the man who, in her opinion, won the election. Well, effectively, the Supreme Court has put an end to the speculation. We have a president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that is the end of it. Now, in addition to that, everybody is entitled to say anything, to have a freedom of expression, to have a freedom of opinion, actually. So she can say whatever she wants to say. She's entitled to that opinion. But the issue has been laid to rest by the Supreme Court.
Izuchukwu, do you think that is unpatriotic?
You know, 2023 general election came with a lot of emotional strain for so many people. True, some people still feel the hurt. Not just that a particular candidate won, but again, because of the process. There is a way and manner in which certain things will be done. Even if it doesn't go your way, you would see transparently where you have fallen short. It still brings us back to the process of the election. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a world-renowned and respected figure, right? She's brought tremendous goodwill to Nigeria and the Nigerian people. And we know that she publicly declared support for Peter Obi in the last election cycle. If her opinion is that Peter Obi won the election, the truth of the matter is that millions of Nigerians share that opinion. Because how do you explain that 3 elections held at about the same time, one device for the same election? For some reason, there was a glitch that affected one of the 3 elections that was transmitted through one single device. Until today, nobody has creditably explained how those glitches arose. In my view, it appears the glitches is very discriminatory. It has to be a discriminatory glitch. It didn't affect the Senate election. It didn't affect the House of Representative election. It decided to affect only the presidential election. Mind you, Festus Okoye, quoting him, he says that the software for the BVAS was locally manufactured by in-house INEC engineers. What that points to is that no matter the form of glitches, the person who wrote the software or the code or whatever it is can fix it. These were not foreign experts. And so there's a lot of suspicion that, and I also share that sentiment too, that the suspension of electronic transmission of the presidential election was for the advantage of a particular candidate. I do not think it's an unpatriotic thing to express an opinion. What you think, looking at the facts and circumstances surrounding a very critical national issue like the presidential election. I don't think it's unpatriotic.
All right, thank you very much, Izuchukwu. Very quickly, before we just move on to the next segment, we want to talk about one of the most trending news this past week, which is the the car purchase by the Senate and the criticism that followed. The Senate, in response to that, stated that lawmakers required vehicles for their duties. The chairman of the Committee on Senate Services, the chairman of the Committee on Senate Services, Sunday Karimi, had argued that the members of other government branches use similar vehicles and called on critics to scrutinize ministers and members of state assemblies who also use such vehicles. Now, we all know that they all chose Toyota Land Cruiser, and the conversation was why did they not patronize Nigerian-made brands or cars that have been assembled in Nigeria, like Innocent or Nord, etc. And one of the reasons that they stated is also because of the bad state of the road. That is why they need to get vehicles like Toyota Land Cruisers. So is it not better to fix the bad roads that will benefit the entire populace as opposed to buying a Toyota Land Cruiser to help them navigate the bad roads that they are supposed to fix?
Okay, well, when the information came out about the purchase of these vehicles, that I think it was about 160 million each or thereabout, I think the government is not really reading the room, or they're actually reading the room and ignoring what the citizens really think about things. You cannot tell the Nigerian citizen to tighten his belt, and at the same time you are engaging in this sort of wanton and wasteful spending. In my opinion, I think it was actually disgraceful for somebody to have come out and a representative of government, in the manner of speaking, and he said that he needs Land Cruisers because the roads are bad. It makes more sense to fix the roads. Now, if you buy a Land Cruiser for, let's say, 160 million, we know what that can provide to the poor man on the street that cannot afford to eat. If you look at the statistics coming out of Nigeria, we are on the brink of the precipice. It is a very terrible situation. So I think it's disgraceful, and I think it's irresponsible for the Senate or the National Assembly to go into such purchases at this time, and to now justify it based on their own failure to provide the required infrastructure makes it more disgraceful. That's my opinion.
Is it true, finally?
Yes, I agree with you. There are local companies who do great work in the automobile industry. I know of Eliza Day Jacotoland Limited, and you can mention the rest of them. So yes, it's more prudent to fix the roads. But yes, as lawmakers, they also need to get all the resources they need to function in their office. But the question is, at what cost? Aren't there other vehicles with lower cost that will give the same service, that will help in achieving the same purpose?
True.
There are.
True.
It's more prudent to fix the road. It will benefit more Nigerians than spending that much.
Absolutely.
It's a waste. And when Nigerians complain, they are complaining about the cost of governance.
Thank you very much. And Rubbin Minds will continue after this break. I'd like to say a big thank you for coming on the show. Please don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Rubbin Minds. Before we went on the break, we were having conversations around some of the topical issues that are affecting our nation, from the affirmation of the Supreme Court's verdict, the affirmation of President Tinubu's election by the Supreme Court. We also talked about Chimamanda Adichie's talk during her symposium and what her thoughts were surrounding the election. Right now, we need to move on to some other areas of life. It has been said that there are three basic needs of man, which is food, shelter, and clothing. So we want to talk about shelter, the real estate. What should we know about real estate? Is the investment worth it? If you have money right now to invest in real estate, is this a good time to invest in real estate? Also considering what we see on the media now with, real estate developers perhaps not getting the right permits, and they build on certain lands that the government did not permit them to build on, and these properties end up getting destroyed. All of this conversation, how affordable is real estate in Nigeria today, considering our economic situation? With me in the studio, I have a real estate expert. He's a real estate developer, Bayo Lawal. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. First of all, real estate. Why should anybody own a piece of real estate?
Okay, thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I want to say to our audience, if you are viewing, You don't own a space on the surface of the earth if you don't have a piece of the earth. So it is important because we are all tenants, one way or the other. But the only way you can be a landlord, I'm not sure anybody wants to die without being buried on a place where they bought or that is their land or somewhere in a cemetery. You don't also want to die a tenant. It is important that we all understand that we need to have a piece of real estate because, number one, it gives you some level of flexibility. It reassures your hope in life. And not just that, it's just that it gives you some level of comfort and also help you to make some cash flow. Because it's important that you won't be working for life. And real estate has been proven to be one of the best ways to get return on investment. When you look at other investments over the years, they tend to fail. But one investment that will continue to succeed is real estate. And it is important that when we invest wisely.
Okay, well, I like the fact that you said one of the most profitable areas in life is real estate, yes. Right? But if you check from the last quarter of 2022, I think the real estate industry as a whole made just about $3.9 billion. When compared to real estate in other places, you can see that that's quite a small number.
Okay, so are you talking about Nigeria?
I'm talking about in Nigeria, the last quarter of 2022.
Yeah, so if you say the last quarter of 2020, real estate has actually been one of the industry in this country that has been sustaining this country because of some of the inflow and some of the, some of the results that we see that real estate produces. You cannot compare any other industry in Nigeria as we speak to real estate. There is a lot of boom currently happening within the real estate sector, and that is because there's a lot of attention shifting towards that industry. And I know very much that the government is also interested, and as we go, there will be a lot of regulations, which we can see that is currently happening, and then a lot of things will be put in proper perspective so that people don't lose their money when they invest.
Okay, now talking about people losing their monies, sometimes people don't just lose their monies when they invest in perhaps in fraudulent lands. We're talking of legitimate lands now.
Okay.
What? I'm sure you must have seen the news that the government in Lagos recently demolished a whole set of houses because they deemed them to be illegal structures. So what can one do to make sure that you don't have such a problem in the future?
Okay, so it is very important for buyers to understand that before buying, because in Nigeria, our user understanding needs to be more enlightened, and people need to try as much as possible to get information. A lot of people buy property and don't do enough due diligence. I will tell you that it is very, very easy for people to pay, but to get them to fill a form is difficult. Somebody paid 10 million. I run a real estate company with my partner, Dukia Investment, and people pay money and you send forms to them. Many people don't even read the contract. Many people don't even care to know what the property is all about. All they want to know is that I'm investing with the company. The company will not do all the job because not all the companies are set up and that means well for you. A lot of people set up with different motives. So the very first thing you want to do is to try as much as possible to do due diligence. And there are a lot of government parastatals that are being saddled with this responsibility. There is a Surveyor General's office. That's where it all starts. You even want to check what is the purpose of the land, because not all land are usable. There is a land that is residential. There is a land that is said to be agric. You can only farm in that place. So imagine you are buying an agric land and your intention is to build there. You already got it wrong. Is that land good? Yes, but the purpose of the land is different. There is a land that is, in Ogun State, they have a lot of industrial land, and that's where you see a lot of companies going to. You see Heineken, you see all of the Guinness and all of those setting up within Ogun State border. The reason is because majority of the land within that area is said to be industrial, while in some places it is strictly residential. So you need to know the use, the land use, the reason why that land is set apart. And for example, some people's land was, their building structures was demolished in Lekki and all. So for example, you are blocking the drainage. And, in that particular axis, your house needs to be at least 6 meters above the sea level. So it is important for people to know that there are certain coastal areas that, it's opened up and there is need for the flood, to move. But when people are buying, they don't care to check what is the use of this area, Number one, when you take a survey of a land, the survey of the land, when you go to Alausa to check, they chart it for you. It shows you exactly where you are buying. It shows you what is on that land. If your land is on the drainage, it will show you. If you took a professional surveyor there, a registered one to check for you, who is not deceiving you, it will show you. Before you even start building, the Lagos State parastatal responsible for issuing building permits will not give you your building permit if they first did not confirm that you have a registered survey. So all of these things, they work hand in hand. And it is important for people at home to try as much as possible, not just listen to what other people say. Because I can tell you something and tomorrow what I'm saying is not right because I don't work within this parastatal. So it is your job, even after I've done my own due diligence, to fact check. To go and check, you double check and you ask. And you don't just ask people on the street, you ask professionals, people within those parastatals, so that you can be sure that you are getting the right information.
Yeah, I understand what you just said, and it all sounds good, but also you should understand that some people just sort of lay their trust and their faith in some of these developers. So are you saying that we have a lot of fraudulent developers in the real estate industry? Particularly, I'm even more concerned about the houses in Lekki, because we have a lot of houses falling down every single time in those prime areas.
So I would say that the real estate industry in Nigeria, as we speak, it's a baby, it's growing. And as we speak, it's one of the industries that is going at a very fast rate because of the demands and because of some of the level of return on investment that it attracts, and the fact that, you know, the Lekki axis is opening up. A lot of infrastructure is happening there. There's a very high level government presence, and, you know, so a lot of things are happening. However, I will not say that we have a lot of developers that are not doing their assignment. I will only say we have some greedy people within the developers, not all, because I know a host of people that are doing the right thing, just like myself and my partner. So we have some people who are not doing the right thing, and that's where the government comes in, because I, for example, cannot tell Mr. A or Mr. B to stop doing whatsoever they are doing, maybe because I feel what they are doing is not right. But the only person that is saddled with that responsibility is the government agency. We're supposed to go check. We're supposed to know the mix ratio. We're supposed to know what is supposed to be built here. For example, some people get permit to build a 2-story building. That was the permit that was approved. But because they were able to go through the back end, through somebody, and they go there and build a 3-story building, that contradicts what was approved. If the foundation that was done can only take a 2-story building, you know, a collapse is inevitable.
Yeah.
So if, for example, what was approved for you is an 8-story building, you have an 8-story building approved, and you are going there to put 20 on it, and the pile or the foundation you did can only take 8. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yes,
there's going to be a lot of problems. So there is need for us to check what is being done, and there is need for a lot of sophistication within the government agency, so that we have people who are well taught and knows some of these things come in and then, you know, do the checks.
Now let's talk about the issue of buying from Omonile. What are your thoughts?
Omonile?
Yes, buying from Omonile.
So I want to state that it is important for people to know that even real estate developers, the first point of contact is either government or Omonile, because they are recognized. So who are Omoniles? The word Omonile, you know, is because it's being used in a negative, you know, the stories that surround a lot of Omonile is negative. However, we need to know that you and I, we are Omonile. Because if you are within a community and your community government has actually released some portion of land within that community to you, and maybe you fall under a family, it means that you are also part of the children in that area who owns land. Omonile are just a set of people within the community that owns a land. Are you getting what I'm saying? That does not mean that all Omonile are bad people. We need, you know, because context is very important when we talk about people. However, the concept of Omonile has been bastardized because a lot of people have used that name, and you know, they've defrauded a lot of people selling land that does not exist, and they've done a lot of stuff. So for me, I would say that it is important for people to buy from companies. I would say it that way, because I believe that they can hold those legal entity. Omonile is not a legal entity. You might not be able to hold them if issues happen. But I feel that when you buy from the company, trusted company that you have vetted, then you can go ahead to buy, because it makes your process easy. The company is supposed to have done its due diligence before pushing out the product to the market. Okay, now let's talk about how the common man can actually afford real estate, if that is even possible. Look at the minimum wage. Minimum wage is still 30,000 naira. It hasn't been increased.
and even, let's say, a civil servant at the highest peak of their career will probably earn less than 8 million per year. So how can such a person now own, even if it's a one-bedroom flat?
All right. I think that we all need to understand that everybody can own a piece of property. The question now is where. Not everybody can own a piece of property in Lagos. We all need to understand that because Lagos is an expensive location. First, we need to establish that. The only way this thing can come into play is when the government itself is responsible to making sure that they provide a lot of housing, because housing is not cheap anywhere in the world. In fact, I would say that the real estate market in Nigeria is one of the most affordable anywhere in the world. Talk about UK, US, Canada, and all of those places. They buy houses with as high as you hear $500,000. But in Nigeria, you can get a 2-bedroom for 45 million, for 50 million. When you convert that, it's not even up to a $60,000. So when you begin to look at it plus or minus. But what I can say is that, one of the things that government must do is to create more enabling environment, is to make sure that the government is actually aiding people. We first have to start from the cost of the land. How much are people buying the land? If land is more accessible, and government needs to create a lot of infrastructure. I don't have any problem living anywhere in Nigeria if there are infrastructure. For example, we have a train that is coming from Ibadan. A lot of people can then migrate to Ibadan to start living, because if they are sure that the train can leave from Ibadan by 7 a.m. and get to Lagos before 8, and they need to resume work by 9, why not? They can live in Ibadan, and houses in Ibadan are way cheaper than Lagos. People can then live in Ogun State, where they know that they can build their house with, let's say, with 8 million or 7 million, as the case may be, because not so the houses, there is a lot that comes with houses. Some people want to build, they want a sophisticated house, as the way you design the house also talks about, how expensive the house will look and all, but they are affordable housing. But the question is, can everybody afford a house in Lagos? The answer is no.
Okay. And what do you think the government has done thus far about housing? Because obviously, like you said, it's very expensive, and if the government does not intervene, then the common man might not find shelter.
I think thus far, I would say in Nigeria, before now, I'm sure when you go around, you see a lot of Jakande estate, you see Gowan estate, you see all of those estates. They build them, I sometimes live in Abeson, Abeson estate. When you go to those places, you see the unit that was constructed. It wasn't constructed by a private entity. It was constructed by government. You see Latif Jakande estate. When you go to around after Ikate, you see Jakande estate. They were built, you see about 500 units, 1,500 units, and all. Those can only be done by the government. A private individual coming into the market to do that, we take some level of, heavy lifting.
And why do you think the government has not been doing that? Because most of these buildings are very old.
I don't work in the government, so I wouldn't know why the government is not doing that or the government is not looking into that. But I want to say that it is important for us to know that the government, it is one of the duties of the government to make sure that life is comfortable for people, housing is accessible, people can have a place where they can live, and the only one who can make these things happen is the government.
All right, thank you so very much for coming on the show. Final words before we move on to the next segment.
Okay, so I would just like to say to our audience, if you are looking at buying a property and then you are looking at investing your money, it is important for you not just to drop your money, but for you also to do your due diligence. Double check, make sure that you go into the right offices. If you can drop your 10 million, your 5 million, your hard-earned money, you should be able to take out 2 or 3 days to walk into the right offices and get the right information so that you don't lose your money. But I want to say there are trusted companies out there, I'm sure. I run one of those companies with my partner, and then it will be a pleasure to partner with you.
Okay,
thank you so much.
I love how you just had to plug in your business right there real quick. But for people like us, young people like us that are interested in the business of real estate, what do I have to do to just get into the real estate industry and make as much money as I can?
So I would say first, get knowledge. In anything you want to do, in this Nigeria of today, get knowledge. First, before knowing people. That's what a lot of people get wrong. They go know people, then before they get knowledge. But first, I would say get knowledge. The real estate industry in Nigeria is diverse, is large. There are different areas in which you can play. You can be a developer, you can be a realtor. There are different areas in which you can play. But first, in every area in which you want to play, get knowledge. Because with the right knowledge, then you can make the right decisions. If not, you make a lot of mistakes and you'll not be happy that you even you are coming into the real estate industry.
So you're saying that I cannot just maybe open an Instagram page, get fine houses, take pictures of them and try to sell it
You'll
off?
be contributing to our problems.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Tell me about how would that be contributing?
So one of the things that we need to know is that the real estate industry is not just like every other industry. Like you cannot join the stock exchange in Nigeria, or you cannot get listed, or you cannot tell me that you want to open a petroleum station somewhere without any knowledge about how it runs. You need knowledge. And I'm not just talking about the knowledge of 2-3 days. You need to go and learn on how to do the business, because there are a lot of people that are involved. I've just mentioned a lot of parastatals that are involved in Lagos when it comes to registering a land. You need to be in the Surveyor General's office. You need to go to lands. There's a department called lands. You need to go to the building agency. There are a lot of people that are involved. There is a long value chain, and if you don't know all of this, you are definitely going to make a mistake. So it is important that before you even say you want to start, get knowledge on how this thing is done. Then when you get the knowledge, it's even much easier for you. You can begin to move on a very fast level. But if you don't get knowledge, you make a lot of blunders.
All right. Thank you very much. You know that knowledge is power. We've had such a beautiful segment. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Rubbin Mind will continue after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Rubbin Minds. Before we went on the break, we were discussing about the real estate industry and how it's very important for us to do our due diligence. So we just to make sure that the government doesn't demolish our buildings after investing our hard-earned monies into it. Right about now, it is time to talk about the state of the nation. It is very sad that most Nigerians cannot even afford 3 square meals anymore. In the past, we would say that Nigerians are known for suffering and smiling. But right now, I can categorically state that Nigerians are now known for suffering and they are not smiling. How can we navigate through such tough times? What can be done? How loud should our voices be to make sure that things get better in this nation? How patient should Nigerians be? Joining me on Zoom to discuss the state of the nation is the Executive Director, Connect Hub NGR, Rinu Oduola. Welcome, Rinu. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for having me.
Let's just jump straight into it. We have never had a worse time in this nation than what we're facing currently. The prices of food has skyrocketed. Obviously, fuel is so expensive. Foreign exchange keeps climbing, and we cannot get to hold and stabilize the naira against the dollar. Where do we go from here?
Thank you very much. And I think that this conversation is important to have now. We're not the only ones having these conversations. You can see several Nigerians across the regions are also complaining. But I like to start from the fact that, you see, people who won elections by cheating the people will continue to cheat them even when they get in power. And that's what we're seeing now. No one gets to power through disputed results, voter disenfranchisement, violence, highly divisive messages, and suddenly brings about good governance. And I think that is also a shame, and Nigerians need to sit down and think that after the 8 years of maladministration of the former President Buhari, we're still going, through this. And if the few months that we've had now in this new government is anything to go by, if they're going to guide towards the future, there's little room for hope. There seems to me, I feel like there seems to be little thought on how to manage the consequences of catastrophic policies or how to minimize pains of Nigerians. And you can see that this current government, what is most prevalent about what they do is that they talk without thinking, and the consequences come back to lie on the Nigerian people. The government is yet to come up with any major economic policy direction. All they do is to make pronouncements and then go back. It is clear to the Nigerian people that this is a government of trial and error and diminishing hope. And Nigerians should ask themselves, we should ask ourselves, are we seeing any evidence of the government in our lives? Looking back at the 100 days or more of this current president, will it be safe to say that this government is for us? The first era that started was on subsidy. Subsidy was gone. Meanwhile, there was no thinking about managing those consequences. There was going to be some work done on terrorism, on the Special Enforcement and Monitoring Unit. Nigerians are yet to see that. The student loan bill, the students are yet to get the loans, but schools, universities have already increased their fees. Another policy of catastrophic proportions. On terrorism, again, different groups have continued to kill Nigerians across the country. I think that one statement that I remember that this current government, the presidency said, was that, oh, we will discourage corruption. But are you seeing that? We would have said that, oh, maybe a total war on corruption would have helped this government. But when we talk about corruption, the representative of this government have never been known to be great fighters of corruption. Neither have they said anything memorable about it. We would have said a war on security would have brought about some succor to Nigerians. But with the choice of people like the ex-governors Matawale and Muhammadu, who have been appointed as minister and minister of state for defense, who have no security pedigree, how do we have hope in security? There are abductions across this country, crime is increasing, kidnappings are increasing, terrorists are regrouping, and recently I think that over 30 soldiers of the Nigerian military were even killed in Niger State. So I don't know, one that I can remember is that women and youth will feature prominently in this government. Please, are you seeing that? In fact, the current status that the World Bank representative in Nigeria said that 4 million extra people have been moved into multidimensional poverty. This is in addition to the 133 million people that are there again. I can go on and I can round up, but my point is that there have been talk and talk from this government, but no credible actions, no tangible results. The living standards of Nigerians have decreased. No positive results. Nigerians are yet to see any lasting policies and solutions. Thank you.
All right. So, Renu, I understand where you're coming from, and I understand your pain, because obviously a lot of us feel that same pain. But also, do you think it's rather too soon to actually give this government a scorecard, owing largely to the fact that, like you said, there was a lot of mismanagement in the previous administration, and in as much as it is the same political party, which is still the APC, this is a different individual with a different team, and they are trying to bring up different policy. So do you think do you think we should give them the benefit of doubt to actually see how these things, come through, because it might not happen overnight?
Thank you for also agreeing that, it's the same party, it's the same people. Even with the appointments that we've seen recently, you can see ex-governors are being recycled, political, what do you call them, assistants are being given other positions. It's the same cycle of political actors that previously performed woefully in the last governments that have been reinstated in this government. And how do you give a presidency that emerged under fraudulent circumstances the benefit of the doubt? I mean, the core of the foundation of democracy is that there is to be rule of law, there is to be respect for the people's will that is expressed at elections. And so when these two things are missing, there's no amount of benefit of doubt that you will be able to place on that foundation that will make the building stand. So if we're to even give any benefit of doubt, just like the question I said earlier, the last 120 days or so, if anything is to go by, are they promising? Do they look promising for Nigerians? The campaign tagline of this presidency, of this government, was said to be renewed hope. But the only thing Nigerians are seeing currently is diminished hope. The only thing Nigerians are seeing currently is diminished bank accounts. Even our money in their accounts are no longer what the value they are yesterday. You have no peace of mind waking up anymore, because your 500 naira could have turned to 400 naira or 300 naira by the time the day begins. And if you're talking also of benefit of the doubt, like I said, you will see actions. One would expect that a government that is serious about tackling challenges, like you said, this person is a new president, right? One expects a government that is serious about tackling the challenges from the previous government to form a government of talent. And like they promised, we will see technocrats. Like there was overhyped narratives on how, Lagos was developed. But if you look at the government that has been formed, it is mediocre, it is bloated, it is consisting of cronies and political allies, and it just screams of political rewards to everyone. So I do not think that there should be any person expecting anything new. It's the same government. It's a government of the rich, of the corrupt, who's already serving the elites, and they will continue to do so. Thank you.
Okay, now you did make a statement because you said the current president got to power through fraudulent means. I'm sure you're aware that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, has affirmed his presidency. As an individual, don't you think we should respect the decisions of the Supreme Court and also try to, in the spirit of patriotism, see how we can actually move forward from this point? What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. I definitely do think that, yes, I have followed the Supreme Court's judgment, and I definitely do think that, yes, the Supreme Court's judgment should be respected, but that doesn't stop citizens from saying the facts. And the fact is that this government did emerge on a fraudulent mandate. I think that if you analyze the elections that just happened, over 60% of the electorates who voted in the elections never voted this president in the first place. So, we can always go back and bring Nigerians and say, these elections, do you think they were fraudulent or not? We all know what Nigerians would say. I just think that, as for me, there needs to be some advices from people towards the government at this point in time. Ever since the Supreme Court has ruled their case, it is obvious that this government would, despite all court cases, despite all arguments, despite all rational thoughts, that this government will be in place for at least for the next 3 years. I think that there needs to be...
Sorry to interrupt you because we're almost out of time, but there's a pertinent issue I really want to hear your thoughts on. I'm sure you must have seen that millions and millions, billions actually, of our naira is being allocated to purchase of luxury cars, both from the upper chamber and the lower chambers, particularly the Senate. Now, the Senate is comprised of different political parties, the PDP, the APC, the Labour Party, and the newer parties are being perceived to be the voice of the people because we just believe that the people that ran with those platforms would really they don't have godfathers and they didn't have a lot of political embargo on them. And we were really hoping that they would represent the people. But we've not heard anybody from all those newer parties, the Labour Party and other parties, even speak against these overspending in the higher chamber. What are your thoughts on it?
I very much still believe that many of the people, even from the new parties who now are in the Senate and all of that, ran on people's goodwills to win the elections. And then now that they are there, it seems like we have returned back to, a cost Nigerian style of governance where none of these representatives would even say anything. Nigerians are being asked to cut down on their living expenses, but their representatives are not cutting back on anything. How can you waste over 100 million to purchase cars for representatives and senators and all of that while claiming that Nigeria is broke? One would expect that with the prevailing economic climate across all parties, at least representatives who are also Nigerians will see that there is a need to cut down on the cost of governance, just like you asked. The director of the Road Transport Administration at the Federal Ministry of Transportation in August said that, Nigerians need to adopt bicycles to transport themselves. And then I asked myself, what about the senators? What about the representatives? Why are they buying cars rather than bicycles to transport themselves in a time where we are borrowing to fund our projects, borrowing to service our loans, we are buying cars? And this is definitely a trickle of the effects of the policies that come from the top. Look at the president. There have been cabinet members of over 50, and there is no indication that he's done. He has appointed over 10 aides whose jobs are to spin false narratives and propaganda. And then there was an estimate I saw that even at least 12 trillion can be saved from all these ministries, departments, agencies that have been created across all boards. So, you cannot spend billions.
Yeah. So Reno, we're really almost out of time. We're almost out of time. So you're saying effectively that parties, irrespective of the parties that these politicians find themselves in, with the current crop of politicians we have in government, whether PDP, APC, or Labour Party, are you basically saying they are all the same and we're not seeing any difference?
I think that, definitely, 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 I think that, I do definitely think that the people who will suffer the brunt of any politician in any political party that is not speaking up at this point in time are Nigerians. And Nigerians need to understand that governments do not exist in silos. You cannot elect people in NMPP, in AAA, in ZZZ, and expect them to be good governance advocates without holding them accountable. So my advice would be the Nigerians who voted these guys into power, regardless of whatever political party, should start calling up their representatives. If you look at the current state of government, ordinary Nigerians are being kept at arm's length. Nobody is visiting communities in distress. Nobody is asking how their communities is. Nigerians should pick up the phone and start.
We have to go now. We're now out of time, but thank you so much for coming on, and we'll definitely have you back. Thank you so very much for coming on Rubbin Minds. And that's our show for today. It's been a wonderful show, and I hope you did enjoy it. Catch us next week, same time, same station. From me, it's bye.